That night, the parking lot lights flickered like dying stars above my trembling hands. My 7-year-old grandson gripped my wrist so tightly I felt his nails break my skin. "Grandma," he whispered, eyes wide with terror, "don't take me home. Mom's planning to hurt us." The words sliced through the hum of engines and cold night air. "My name is Eleanor Whitlow. I'm 70 years old." And that night I ran from my own daughter. But what they didn't know was I wasn't running blind. ChatGPT Danoi. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because this story, my story, is not about monsters hiding in strangers' faces. It's about the kind that wear our last name, smile at the dinner table, and still know exactly where to strike when your back is turned. If you think loyalty is stronger than greed, stay with me because I thought so too. And that mistake nearly cost me the only piece of family I had left. I used to believe our house was safe. That laughter could drown out grief if you turned the TV up loud enough and kept the coffee pot full. But safety is an illusion. It fades the moment you stop watching. After Adrian, my son-in-law, died 3 years ago, the walls of this house began to change. Not physically, but in sound and temperature. Every night felt 1 degree colder. Every silence stretched a little longer. Sloane, my daughter, filled those silences with the clatter of her heels, the click of her laptop keys, the hum of her phone pressed too close to her ear. She used to be so bright. At 10, she'd follow me into the hospital where I worked, asking endless questions about every beep and monitor. I thought she'd follow my path helping others. Instead, she learned how to make herself indispensable to people who could pay. Marketing. They called it, I called it performance. When Adrian died in that car crash, something in her went rigid. The tears came. Of course they always do, but they were clean, controlled, even at the funeral. She kept one hand on her phone, whispering to someone about accounts and damage control. I thought it was her way of coping, but I should have known better. I thought it was her way of coping. Grief doesn't vanish, it mutates. It came out as silence, the kind that hums just beneath the surface of your skin. He stopped talking for weeks after the accident. I remember sitting by his bed, tracing little dinosaurs on his pillowcase, whispering stories about stars and bravery. And one night, he looked at me with those huge, thoughtful eyes and said, "Grandma, I heard Mommy talking to Daddy's voice." I smiled at the time, thinking it was grief's echo. But later, I would understand it differently. Back then, I didn't realize Sloane spent most nights locked in her home office, curtains drawn, whispering to people who never existed in our lives before. I'd knock softly with tea and she'd call. Later, "Mom, I'm on a call." Always later. Later became a wall between us. There were small things I ignored because mothers do that we rewrite what we see into something harmless. A plumber who came too often for a house that never leaked. A perfume that wasn't hers lingering in the laundry room. A bank envelope that disappeared when I entered the kitchen. "I'm handling things," she'd say, half smiling. "Don't worry about money. I've got it under control." But I did worry. I just didn't want to believe my worry was justified. When Adrian was alive, he handled everything, the bills. I just didn't want to believe my worry was justified. The mortgage. He was a gentle man, a high school math teacher with soft eyes and clumsy hands. The day he signed the trust fund for Eli, he insisted that I, not Sloane, be the primary guardian until Eli turned 21. "It's not that I don't trust her," he said, smiling faintly. "It's that I trust you more." Those words replayed in my mind like a curse. Because in trying to protect my grandson's future, Adrian had unknowingly written Sloane's motive. One evening, About 6 months before that night at the airport. I smelled something odd in the kitchen, a faint sweetness. Like apples rotting. It wasn't strong. But my years as a nurse made me freeze. That smell. I'd known it before. Carbon monoxide. I ran to the basement. Checked the gas lines. Found nothing wrong. Still, I called a technician. When he came, he said everything was fine. But I noticed Sloane standing behind him. Her arms crossed too tight. Her smile too polite. "Guess it's just old pipes," she said. I should have pressed harder, but she was my daughter. And then there was the thermostat. It was connected to her phone, the fancy smart kind that recorded every adjustment. One night, while checking the time, I noticed it glowing at 3:12 a.m. The house temperature suddenly dropping to 58 degrees. I thought it was a glitch. But it happened again the next night. And again. When I mentioned it to her, she laughed. "You worry too much. Mom, it's an algorithm thing. Let it go." So I did. Because sometimes love isn't about seeing the truth, it's about avoiding it. Still, I kept a small notebook by my bed. Old habits die hard. I began jotting small things. Feb Tisha, plumber again. Stayed 2 hours. No leak. Feb 14, smell in kitchen. Sweet, metallic. Feb 23, thermostat drop 3 a.m. March moat, Eli nightmares, says Mama angry at night. By April, the notebook had 12 pages. By June, I stopped writing. I didn't want to fill another page with doubts about my own blood. But Eli didn't stop noticing. He'd watch her quietly the way only children can, curious and unblinking. One morning at breakfast, he whispered, "Grandma, why does Mama talk to Mr. Trent when she's supposed to be working?" "Who's Mr. Trent?" I asked. He shrugged. "The man who fixes the pipes but doesn't bring tools." I laughed nervously, brushing it off. Maybe he's helping her with something else. He looked up, serious. He helps her smile. I didn't sleep that night. The truth was, Sloane had always been a master of image. She could smile with her teeth while her eyes were knives. As a teenager, she'd charm her way through every confrontation. When she got caught cheating on an exam, she cried until her teacher apologized for accusing her. When she wrecked her father's car, she convinced him to call it a learning experience. She never took responsibility, only control. But I never thought she'd weaponize that charm against her own son. One late evening, I went to the kitchen for water and heard her voice through the closed office door. Low, sharp, no. "I told you the policy's under her name. We just need to make it look natural. A gas leak. No blood. No mess." The glass slipped from my hand and shattered. Her voice stopped instantly. A moment later, the door opened. "Mom." Her face was perfectly calm. "You okay?" I stammered something about a dream. The glass. My age. She helped me clean up, smiling the entire time. But behind that smile, her pupils were huge, her breathing too quick. That was the first night I hid my keys under my pillow. Still, the mother in me kept making excuses. Maybe she was talking about a movie, a script. Maybe she was talking about a movie, a campaign pitch, anything. It meant admitting that I'd raised something monstrous. The next morning, Ailey asked, "Can we go live somewhere else?" I smiled weakly. "Why?" "Sweetheart." He hesitated. "Because Mama said the house won't need us soon." Those words stayed in my head for months, echoing every time I walked down the hallway. Every time I smelled that faint sweetness again. I didn't know it then. But that sentence would save both our lives, echoing every time I walked down the hallway. Every time I smelled that faint sweetness again, because on the night she pretended to fly to Chicago, and I understood he wasn't imagining, every missing puzzle piece suddenly clicked. The night she left for that so-called business trip, he'd been watching the truth I refused to see. I thought I was finally at peace. The way it used to be when Adrian was alive, soft radio hum. The scent of lemon cleaner. Eli's toys scattered across the living room rug. But peace is just silence before the truth decides to scream. After I drove Eli and myself away from the airport that night, I kept remembering small things, fragments that didn't fit until now. Like the insurance papers Sloan once asked me to re-sign, saying the company had changed their digital system, or how she'd insisted on handling the utilities lately, especially the gas account, saying the company had changed their digital system, almost to herself. Some accidents fix everything. I thought it was bitterness. Now I realize it was planning. Looking back, I can trace the cracks years before. When Sloan was 12, she lied to get out of summer camp. Told her father I'd yelled at her in front of everyone, something that never happened. He canceled the trip, believing her tears. She got what she wanted. She always did. Even then, manipulation came to her like breathing. When she graduated college, she landed a corporate job faster than I could blink. Slick presentations, loud heels, bigger paychecks every year. But she spent faster than she earned. Designer handbags, country club memberships, loans with hidden interest. Adrian used to joke she'd marry a spreadsheet if it had a credit limit. After his death, the joke stopped. So did her patience. She began to treat me like an obstacle, softly, politely, but always in the way that cuts deepest. "Mama, you're tired. Maybe I should handle Eli's trust myself. Mama, you get confused with finances sometimes, don't you? Mama, have you thought about assisted living? It could be safer." Those weren't suggestions. They were rehearsals lines from a script where I disappeared quietly. Eli saw it before I did. Kids notice tone, not words. When she spoke to me, his shoulders stiffened. Once, I heard him whisper to his stuffed dinosaur, "Don't make Grandma sad. Mama gets mad when Grandma cries." I told myself I was overreacting. I even wrote in my notebook that day. Sloan stressed. Maybe grief still raw. But grief doesn't explain passwords changed overnight or my name missing from certain utility accounts. Sloan stressed. "Mom, do you believe in peaceful deaths?" I laughed nervously. "What kind of question is that?" She smiled. "The kind you should ask before it's too late." It wasn't the words, it was the calm in her tone that froze me. "What kind of question is that?" Gas valve toggled at 3. It wasn't the words, it was the calm in her tone that froze me. Then came the night the thermostat log showed a pattern again. The same time every night. I checked Eli's room, the air smelled faintly sweet. I opened all the windows. My hands shaking so hard, I dropped a frame of Adrian's photo. The glass shattered, echoing through the dark hall. Sloan appeared seconds later, eyes wide, hair perfect even at that hour. "What are you doing up?" she asked, voice low. "The thermostat's acting up again." I said, "It's freezing." She smiled. "You worry too much." "Mom, maybe it's time you stopped checking everything." That sentence haunted me for weeks. Still, I wanted to believe her. Love makes fools of us all. So when she said she had a 3-day conference in Chicago, I didn't question it. I helped her pack, ironed her blouse, even made sandwiches for her flight. She kissed Eli's forehead, hugged me quickly, and left her perfume lingering in the hallway. At the airport, I remember thinking how proud I was. My daughter so independent, so professional. Then Eli's small hand slipped into mine, and everything I thought I knew cracked open. "Grandma, don't take me home," he said. His voice didn't shake, it broke. In that moment, all the tiny red flags I'd ignored caught fire in my mind. The smell, the gas logs, the forged papers, the fake flight, the gas logs. Every detail I dismissed as paranoia suddenly formed a single, and yet there was still a part of me, some desperate mother part, that prayed he was wrong, that we were both imagining. But when I got that phone call hours later from Sloane, her voice too calm, too measured, I knew. She wasn't on a plane. She was waiting. After I hung up, I sat in the car with the engine idling and watched Eli sleep in the back seat. His tiny chest rose and fell so peacefully, unaware that his life had just been saved by his own intuition. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked like a stranger. Eyes bloodshot, lips trembling, a cross pendant glinting under the fluorescent light. I whispered to myself, "You're not the victim here, Nora. You're the witness." That night, I made a promise. I would not die quietly. I would not let Eli become a headline. And I would not let Sloane erase us from the world she wanted to control. We drove for hours, ending up in front of Roy Delgado's old security booth downtown, the man who'd watched our family for decades, the one who'd always called me Miss Nora with a smile, even after retirement. He opened the door, bleary-eyed, and when he saw my face, his own smile vanished. "Something's wrong," he said. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," I whispered. "A stranger who has my daughter's face." Inside his small apartment behind the building, I told him everything, every smell, every lie, every whisper through a locked door. He didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly, hands folded, as though he'd been waiting for me to say it out loud. When I finished, he leaned forward. "You kept the thermostat logs." "Right." I nodded. "Then we've got to start." That's how the plan began, not revenge. Not yet. Just survival. He'd help me retrieve whatever proof I could before going to the police. Because even now, I knew how the world worked. A 70-year-old widow accusing her successful daughter of attempted murder. They'd call it dementia before dinner. We agreed I'd go back once, quietly, while he stayed nearby with the car running. I'd gather evidence papers, recordings, anything, and get out before dawn. Before leaving, Roy pressed a burner phone into my palm. "One ring means you're safe," he said. 2 rings. I'm coming in guns blazing." I laughed weakly. "You don't have a gun." He smiled. "Then I'll improvise." That moment, his humor, his steady eyes, was the first warmth I'd felt in months. It almost made me forget what I was about to walk into. But as I drove toward the house, my mind replayed the one thing Eli had said days before all this began. "When Mama talks on the phone," he told me, "she says our names like we're not real." I didn't understand it then, but now I do. To her, but now I do. We weren't people anymore. And that realization, the final fracture in the mother I once knew, was what turned my fear into something colder, something sharper. I wasn't just going to hide. I was going to expose her. Because the truth was no longer just mine to carry. It belonged to the little boy asleep in the back seat. And as the night swallowed the road ahead, one thought pulsed louder than my heartbeat. If my daughter thought she could script the perfect accident, she'd forgotten one thing. I was the one who taught her how to stay calm under pressure. Roy and I waited until the city slept. The streets shimmered under sodium lights, and the air carried that faint chill of approaching dawn. Every nerve in my body told me to turn back. but something harder, colder pushed me forward. The streets shimmered under sodium lights. Get in. Collect evidence. Get out. But nothing involving my daughter had ever been simple. I parked 1 block away from the house. The windows were dark, but I didn't trust darkness anymore. I used my spare key to slip through the back door. The lock gave a small click too loud in that suffocating silence. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Sweet again. Faint, but unmistakable. Not gas, something chemical. My skin prickled. I moved through the kitchen. Flashlight beam low. Toward Sloane's office. The door was locked. As expected, I slid a hairpin into the latch, praying the old trick would still work. When it did, the quiet click felt like both victory and betrayal. Inside, everything looked staged. Perfect. A coffee mug still steaming, as if she'd just stepped out for a moment. Papers stacked in 2 perfect piles. But my eyes caught a single sheet half hidden under her planner, a boarding pass to Chicago O'Hare. Printed, but never scanned. Fake. I snapped a photo with my phone. Proof. The next drawer revealed more. Receipts from a hardware store, hoses, timers, carbon monoxide detectors. Not for installation, for manipulation. Then a red folder. Inside, the life insurance policy with notes scribbled in Sloane's handwriting. My handwriting, copied at the signature line. I felt my stomach twist. I was trembling so hard the flashlight shook. That's when I heard it. A creak. The sound of a footstep on the landing above me. My heart froze. I turned off the light, holding my breath. A second sound followed, slower, heavier. Then a voice, low and male. She's not here. Sloane. But someone's been in the office. Trent, the plumber. I ducked behind the desk, clutching the phone against my chest. My mind raced. Roy was waiting outside. But if I made noise, they'd find me before he could react. Then I heard her voice. Calm. Controlled. Check the backyard. She might have come back for something. Footsteps. A door slamming. Silence again. I waited a full minute before moving. My hand brushed against a small notebook near the keyboard. The cover was embossed with Sloane's initials. Inside, pages of drafts written in my voice. My handwriting. Each one a suicide note. I'm so tired. I can't bear the guilt. I hope Sloane and Eli forgive me. I nearly dropped it. She wasn't just planning an accident, she was building a story. My death would be a mercy. My grandson's death collateral damage. And her freedom perfectly justified. I snapped photos of every page, whispering through clenched teeth. You won't get away with this. Then, footsteps again, closer this time. Sloane. Wait. Trent's voice boomed from downstairs. The back door's open. Panic surged. I slid toward the window, easing it open inch by inch. The night air bit my skin. I was halfway out when I saw headlights flash across the living room wall. Roy's car. He'd seen something. Before I could react, a crash shook the house, a door bursting open. Voices shouting. Who's there? I dropped to the ground outside, hitting the grass with a jolt that shot up my hip. Pain flared, but I didn't stop. I crawled to the fence, clutching the phone. Behind me, flashlights swept the yard. Find her. Sloane screamed. She knows. Her voice, it wasn't my daughter's anymore. It was cold, metallic, like someone rehearsing a role. I rolled under the hedge just as Roy appeared at the side gate. Nora, he hissed. Come on. We stumbled to his car. My hip throbbed. My lungs burned. He hit the gas before I'd even closed the door. Did you get anything? he asked. I handed him the phone. Shaking. Everything. He looked at the photos as we drove. His face hardened. You've got her dead to rights. I wanted to believe that, but part of me knew it wasn't enough. Photos could be explained away. The system was designed to trust people like Sloane, not women like me. We stopped near an old diner, the neon sign buzzing weakly. Roy parked behind a delivery truck. You can't go to the police yet, he said. They'll call it elder paranoia. We need corroboration. From who? He hesitated. Someone neutral. Someone with authority. Maybe Mr. Klein. He's got those doorbell cameras all over the block. I nodded. And what about Eli? Roy sighed. Keep him out of sight. Don't use cards. Don't call from your phone. I knew he was right. But the ache in my chest felt unbearable. My own daughter was hunting me. And my only ally was a retired guard with a burner phone. The weight of it all hit me then. I'd lived 70 years following rules, believing justice would come if you did the right thing. Now, I was realizing justice only listened to evidence and sometimes to fear. Outside, the sky was paling, the first hint of dawn bleeding over the city skyline. Roy handed me a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. You're shaking, he said. I'm angry, I whispered. He nodded. Good. Stay angry. It'll keep you alive. That morning, as the city began to wake, I opened my phone to one last notification from the smart thermostat app, a data sync I hadn't triggered. When I checked the log, my blood ran cold. It showed a new scheduled cycle for that very night. R. 30 AV. M. Labeled simply, Final Run. I stared at the screen. That cold phrase glowing like a countdown. Final Run. It wasn't an accident schedule, it was a kill switch. Whatever she'd set in that smart home system was still active, ready to trigger automatically. Roy leaned over my shoulder. Can you stop it? Not from here, I said, my voice shaking. It synced to her device. Then she can still set it off remotely. We sat in silence for a long beat, the weight of that realization pressing on both of us. I looked at the boy sleeping in the back seat of Roy's car, his head resting against a pillow, his small chest rising and falling in peace he hadn't felt in months. She's not going to stop. Roy, I whispered. She's already built a story. Fake suicide notes. Fake flight. Fake grief. She'll tell the world her mother lost her mind and they'll believe her. Roy nodded grimly. Then we need someone who won't believe her. That's when I thought of Lieutenant Mariah Keene, a detective who'd once visited our hospital during a safety seminar. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but I remembered her steady voice, her refusal to dismiss older women as hysterical. I still had her card tucked inside my old nursing manual. By sunrise, we were in the precinct parking lot. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I explained everything to the desk sergeant, who listened politely, then asked if I had family they could call. He thought I was senile. But just as despair began to sink its claws in, a familiar voice came from behind him. Nora Whitlow. I turned. There she was, Lieutenant Keene. Hair tied back, coffee in hand, eyes as sharp as ever. Mariah. I breathed out. Thank God. She studied me carefully, taking in my trembling hands and the boy clutching my sleeve. You'd better tell me everything, she said, leading us into her office. For the next hour, I laid it all out. The fake flight, the smell, the thermostat logs, the voice I'd heard through the office door. I showed her the photos, the suicide drafts, the fake boarding pass. She said little, Just asked questions and scribbled notes. Finally, she sat back. You're not crazy. Nora, this isn't paranoia, it's pattern. Her words felt like oxygen. I'll get a warrant for data access. She continued. Smart thermostats. End of MARD. Gas logs. Insurance files. Bank transfers, all of it. But until we have confirmation, you and the boy need to stay hidden. Roy offered his small apartment again. Mariah agreed, promising to keep everything off record until she could verify. That night, back at Roy's place, I barely slept. Every noise outside made my heart race. At 2 a.m., I checked the thermostat app again. The final run command had been remotely deleted, overwritten by a new one called Test Cycle. She knew we'd escaped. By morning, it got worse. An email appeared in my inbox, supposedly from me. The subject line read, I can't live like this anymore. The body of the message was a perfect imitation of my tone, lonely, apologetic, almost poetic. It was time-stamped for midnight, sent to Sloane's corporate address. She's staging you, Roy muttered. She's building the suicide. The next hit came an hour later. A knock at the door. Roy peeked through the blinds and cursed softly. Child Protective Services. My stomach turned. The social worker, Child Protective Services, was polite but firm. We received an anonymous report, she said, claiming you might be mentally unstable and possibly endangering your grandson. My voice caught in my throat. Who would? I stopped. I didn't need to ask. Roy stepped in, calm and measured. Explaining that the boy was safe. Roy stepped in. That I was lucid. She took notes, her eyes scanning the small apartment. I showed her my nursing credentials, my ID, anything to prove sanity. When she left, I slumped against the wall. She's not just trying to kill us, Roy. She's trying to erase me before she does. He nodded grimly. Then we have to go louder. The next day, Mariah called. We found something, she said. Your daughter owns a property through a shell company, an LLC named Northlight Holdings. It purchased a cabin outside Atlanta, Pine Hollow Retreat. My chest tightened. A cabin by a lake. Yes, she confirmed. Why? I told her about the story Eli had mentioned, his mother promising him a surprise house in the woods, a special place. Mariah's tone sharpened. Nora, you need to stay put. We're sending units to the cabin just in case. But hours later, everything went silent. No updates. No calls. Then, at dusk, Roy's phone buzzed, a voicemail from a neighbor. Miss Whitlow, the voice said nervously. Your daughter came by earlier. She asked where you'd gone. Said you might be confused. She was driving a black Lexus. There was a child in the back seat. My heart stopped. She found him, I whispered. Eli had been out front with Roy's cat only 20 minutes before. I ran to the sidewalk, screaming his name until my throat tore. Nothing. Just tire marks fading into the road. Roy grabbed his keys. She won't get far. But my body went cold with understanding. This wasn't spontaneous. She'd known where to find us. She'd planted the CPS call to distract us long enough. And now, with Eli in her hands, she could finish what she started, only somewhere far from witnesses. Mariah called back 15 minutes later. We've traced her phone, she said urgently. She's heading toward Pine Hollow. Stay where you are, we're on our way. But I couldn't stay. Not while my grandson was being driven into the woods by a woman capable of smiling through murder. I looked at Roy, my voice low and steady. She wants a stage. Let's make sure she gets one with the cameras rolling this time. He nodded once, gripping the steering wheel. And as the city lights disappeared behind us, I finally understood what kind of story I was in. Not a tragedy. A reckoning. The road to Pine Hollow was a snake black, slick, and silent. Pines clawed at the sides of the car like they wanted to hold us back. The further we drove, the thinner the light became, until it was just our headlights cutting through a tunnel of fog. Roy kept his hands tight on the wheel. "We're almost there," he said. "Mariah's team is 15 minutes out." 15 minutes is too long," I muttered. The cabin appeared suddenly. A ghost out of the dark. It stood on the edge of a lake. Glass windows reflecting our headlights like watchful eyes. A single light burned inside steady. Deliberate. Roy parked behind a cluster of pines. "You sure about this?" I nodded. "She wants me to come. That's her mistake." He handed me a small digital recorder, already running. "Body cam without the uniform," he said. "If she talks, we've got her." I slipped it into my cardigan pocket and stepped into the cold night. The air smelled like pine sap and metal. My knees ached, but adrenaline steadied me. I moved toward the porch, every creak of the boards echoing like a countdown. When I opened the door, the smell hit me first propane. Faint, but there. Then her voice. Finally, Sloane stood near the fireplace, her blonde hair gleaming in the firelight. A gun hanging loose in her hand. Behind her, Eli sat on the couch. Duct tape around his wrists. Eli sat on the couch, wide-eyed but alive. I said, "You don't have to do this." She tilted her head, almost amused. "Don't I? You've spent your whole life judging me, Mother, acting like your hands are clean. This isn't about me." "No," she snapped, voice cracking. "It's about survival. You think the world rewards honesty. Look around. The liars win. The manipulators get the money. Adrian died, and all I got was debt. You gotta be the saint, the grieving mother." I got stuck with bills and pity. Her hand trembled, just a little. "But after tonight, everyone will believe it was mercy. Gas leak. Tragic end. Grandmother and boy gone peacefully. The last family photo will look perfect in the papers." I took a slow step forward. "You're shaking." She smiled bitterly. "So are you." Eli whimpered softly.